Welcome to the final lecture of the Spring 2025 Sunoikisis series session 9, today on the 20th of March 2025. Today's topic is papyrological texts and linguistic research, and we're joined by Marja Vierros and Polina Yordanova Nanev, both from the University of Helsinki, to talk to us about digital papyrology and tree banking. There's a link to the GitHub page below the video with the slides, which will be uploaded after the lecture, and also some of the links that are talked about in the video. If you're watching live, do say hello in the chat, tell us where you're watching from, and ask any questions for discussion at the end in the chat as well, and we'll try and answer those. So I'm going to hand over first to Marja for an introduction to papyri and tree banking. So Marja, off you go.
Okay, thank you for inviting us here. Nice to be back in Sunookisis, and welcome everybody also on my behalf. So first I can show that in this title slide there is a person, it's a fresco where a person is actually reading a papyrus. So that's nice to find these kinds of depictions as well. But let's go to the main point. And okay, so here's the outline for today. So first I will do a small introduction on what are papyri, what is papyrology, why do we study Greek language in papyrological sources, and then I'll go to one case study for phonology, and then Polina will tell you what is tree banking, syntactic annotation, and then I will present another case study using PapyGreek Search. I will tell you what PapyGreek is in a moment, and then we'll go to further case studies and also mention some other projects using linguistic annotation and tree banking. So first, you have probably already heard something about papyri in this course earlier or elsewhere. I'm just very quickly mentioning that the word papyrus can refer to many things. Primarily, it means this plant, the papyrus sedge, that was growing abundantly in Egypt and elsewhere in the Mediterranean in antiquity, not so much anymore. And many products could be manufactured from this plant, like shoes and boats, but the most significant usage for us historians and linguists was the writing material that was produced by cutting thin layers from the stem of this reed and then hammering and drying the two-layer sheet into ancient paper. So the written papyri form a historically very valuable source material. Papyri were used as lightweight writing material through the whole Mediterranean area, but since it was organic material, it did not survive in all of those places. So mostly our papyrus texts survive only from Egypt due to the dryness of the country. The map on the right shows the first fertile Nile Valley, and the green delta area, unfortunately, has given us much less papyri than the other parts of the country, even though we would probably wish that we get lots of papyri from the delta area where the Alexandria library was located. But Greek was the language used in Egypt after the invasion of Alexander the Great, so after around 300 BCE. And then Greek was used also during the Roman period, but after the Arab invasion, Greek quite rapidly fell out of use. Anyway, the period of Greek language used in papyri spans roughly 1,000 years. And the texts written in papyri were both documentary and literary, and today we are focusing more on the documentary texts. What I mean by documentary texts, they are, for example, letters, so administrative or private letters, and other types of administrative text like contracts, receipts, and accounts, and many these types of texts. And since it was written in a country with bilingual inhabitants, Greek was imposed as a super straight language there first. But the texts are sort of very everyday material. The papyri do form a very important source material for language studies. So the use and development of Greek language in Egypt, with all different aspects of it. On the left-hand side, you see one papyrus text, which is actually housed in Helsinki in the National Library here. It's a complaint to a police official about an attack that had happened in the bathhouse for a person, and he was beaten up, and he is making a complaint. So papyri as data, documentary papyrus texts have been edited and published since 19th century. Basically, the invasion of Napoleon in Egypt was the sort of starting phase of papyrology. So after that, Greek texts have been edited and published in book form. And then end of last century, these texts were made electronically available in a CD-ROM format first, but then later on it moved, the corpus moved online. So now we have the Duke Databank of Documentary Papyri available and queryable in papyri.info, which we also call the Papyrological Navigator. So it hosts around 50,000 documents with digital transcription. There's data about more texts, but the transcription is available from around 50,000 documents, but it's roughly 5 million tokens. And it's marked up in TEI Epidoc XML, which is already familiar to you from the earlier lecture on this course. And papyri.info tool, the query interface, is really invaluable to papyrologists who work hard reading, editing, interpreting new and unpublished papyrus texts. And the query interface in the website is basically designed for them, so for papyrologists. What I have listed in this slide is just the main features that you can do there. You should consult the page yourself to explore all the options. But the basic sort of starting point is that you already have some letters or some words, and you wish to find out if similar words or phrases already exist in the corpus. So therefore, the string search is very useful for papyrologists. So you can see what kind of letter combinations can form what types of words and phrases. Closer linguistic study possibilities. So we get to closer possibilities to do some linguistic study here as well by the lemmatized search. But then you already also need to have a word in mind that you are looking for. There are Boolean operators, regular expressions that you can play around with to get quite good results from the papyri.info. You can filter the data by the date of the papyrus, the place of origin, and language, and so forth. So here is just an example of a string search there. I have typed in the Greek letters oikonom, which is not a whole word, but can be, for example, a noun for oikonomos, meaning economist, financial administrator, or it can be part of a verb, oikonomeo, and it can be other things as well. So without using any filters, I've received here 1168 hits with this string. I could then continue by setting more parameters to search, or just start browsing these over 1,000 results and see if there is something useful for me. And then I could go and click the title of the papyrus text and see the whole papyrus and find out more about it. So in that sense, there's many things you can do also by the string search. Here I have made use of the lemmatized search for the noun oikonomos, so I can get all the different grammatical cases used for this noun. So this time I would only have 314 entries to browse through if I wanted to just look at them. But what can the papyri.info query interface not do? It cannot really find grammatical forms. If I just wanted to look at passive participle forms, I cannot find them as such from the papyri.info, or find syntactic relations. So within sentences, if I would like to see what is the predicate, that's not doable. Or it cannot target in the query the variation between original spelling and regularized spelling, even though it codes these variations. So there are sort of, in one word, papyri.info cannot do linguistics. And which is why I applied for funding for a project to ease the pain of Greek linguists who want to use the papyrological source material in an efficient way. And during the recent 20 years, there's been a lot more linguistic interest in papyrological material. So this application resulted in the PapyGreek project, whose funding is now already finished, but the work has not. And we have some pieces finished and others not so much. So there's the grammar part that still needs work until it can be published. And then we have Treebanks that you will hear more about. We have published several data sets of them, but more data is very much wanted. And then we have the search function available, and this is what I will focus on today. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. So the PapyGreek search combines several linguistic levels with different sizes of data. So first of all, there's the editorial interventions based on the epidoc XML there. So we can do orthographic searches, and the orthography, the way things were written, can give us pointers to phonological research. And then we have morphological forms there. So we have both manually annotated data, and then we have automatically analyzed morphological forms. So there we used machine learning and deep neural networks to produce the morphologically annotated corpus. So for the orthographic and morphologic sides, the whole Duke databank of documentary papyri material is available with this data. And then if we go to syntax, we only have the manually annotated Treebanks. So that's a much smaller set of data. But there you can search for dependency structures and word order and many other aspects. There is also possibility to use the contextual information, the metadata, so the time and place taken from the papyri.info. And then we have added some metadata ourselves for writer, author, addressee, scribal, official. And this is only for the tree-banked documents, or mostly. There's a little bit of those that I have added to things where we don't have tree banks, but that's a minor thing. This slide shows a little bit of the technical side that is behind the scenes for the orthographic queries. So first, on the right there, we have an Ostracon text in papyri.info view. So it has the text up and then the apparatus showing the editorial regularizations for this text. So this actually contains a great number of orthographic variation. Almost every word has an entry. So these are misspellings, to use another term. And in the XML, they are coded with the choice tag. In PapyGreek Search, they are equivalent to deletion, addition, and replacement. So the regularized reg tag and the original orig tag within the choice tag are sort of turned into these three different terms. In Ostracon, this is from the point of view of the editor. So the editor has deleted the extra S in the word Ostracon. The editor has added epsilon in the word Dosi because that's more standard spelling. And then the editor has replaced the omega with omicron because that is the standard spelling. And within one word, there are often multiple edits made. So there might be deletion and replacement and so on. So these different edit sequences that are linked to one word, because each word has a word ID in our data, it doesn't basically in papyri.info. And they are then stored in MySQL tables. So they can be queried also by the context of the surrounding letters. And if the addition, the deletion, addition, or something is in word initial or word final place. So this type of table is behind the scenes of this Mons Claudianus Ostracon, for example. So, as you now understand how the orthographic query works, I'll just show quite quickly first case study using the orthographic queries. So looking at the OU allophonic variation. This is based, and if you want to read the whole story, you can look at this article where this query is studied or explained in more detail. So mostly the work is done, the phonological analysis is done by Sonja Dahlgren, and then Erik Henriksson and myself, we are sort of on the PapyGreek technical side, writers of this article. So simplified background information about this case. Greek papyri from Egypt have quite a lot of variation between the graphemes that signify the O sound. So there's short O, long O, and OU. They can be pronounced with O and U. And then the other language that was present in Egypt was Egyptian, of course. So the Coptic writing phase of Egyptian language had allophonic status for O and U. So in stressed position, there was O, and in unstressed position there was U. This is a bit simplified picture, but this suffices now. So in Greek text, the unstressed O was often replaced by the sound U, written by Omicron Ypsilon. And then the stressed U was replaced often with O. And basically, the Egyptian Coptic stress system is perhaps behind this. Greek and Egyptian stress systems were different. Greek one was changing or already changed at this point, and then this is a complicated matter, and I'm not going into the details of the stress system, but it was also sort of in flux, and it's difficult to get information about stress system of language that is no longer spoken, of course. And in Greek, there was also case merger happening between the genitive and the dative case, and it really focuses on these sounds in the second declension nouns, and that this is a very large group of Greek words that follow this declension. So the dative would be O, and the genitive singular would be U. So if we want to query the orthographic variation, if we want to look at when papyrus has Omicron Ypsilon, but the editor has regularized it into omega, so U and O sounds, we can simply use in PapyGreek search this type of simple query. So there's form equals minus Omicron Ypsilon and plus omega. So minus is original and plus is the regularized version, so what the editor thinks it should be. For these, we have this many hits. We can then use regular expressions to give more nuance to the search. Singular dative forms were sometimes written with a iota add script, so additional E added there, but it was not pronounced. Then we get more hits from this search. And then if we do it the other way around with this regular expression form, then it looks like this. So you need to use the regex command there also. And the other way around, approximately the same number, or actually a bit less when we take the 1600 hits there. And we can also define that we want to only look at this in word final position where the case ending was. So here is a bit more regular expression syntax for you. And then we get 841 hits for that. So that means that most of this variation, spelling variation, is in word final position. So exactly in the case ending or other endings. Of course, there are some other words there as well. We haven't now limited this to nouns, for example. And in PapyGreek, we have this possibility of saving certain searches. So, for example, this search is search number 168. The other direction, so what we have there on top of the slide, there are more instances that are word final. And we also see the sort of diachronic dimension of this while we do the search. So the other way around, in both, we have here the both ways around the change, but we do see that there is significant peak sort of on after 4th century, when Coptic is sort of gaining more ground in Egypt. So what would be the results for this very short case study? After sort of several different queries on different grapheme variations of the O and U sounds, the Coptic stress pattern can be seen behind many, if not most, of the instances we find. So it happens in the case endings, perhaps due to the word final position being often unstressed. So for example, in disyllabic words. There's also something called co-articulation, the consonants affecting vowel quality, that can also be an explanatory factor. So there are actually very many dimensions in this that can explain, and that's often of course the case in linguistic questions. And the variation between O and U was relatively rare before the Roman period, when Coptic began to appear. So the peak I mentioned in the previous slide. And the Egyptian phonological influence and Coptic orthographic practices both are potentially behind the variation in bilingual settings, which is most of Egypt, I would say. But the results are still quite inconclusive. Quite a lot of more statistical analyses are needed to get sort of more deeply into this question. So this was just a sort of taster of the study. And now we can move on to Polina explaining about tree banking.
Right, to remember to unmute myself. Thank you, Marja. So that was a very interesting presentation about what you can do in terms of linguistic research with orthography and phonology. That are things that are possible in the PapyGreek platform. Today we decided, Marja and myself, to tell you a little bit more about tree banking, which is sort of the focus of PapyGreek. And I'm going to try to take upon myself this challenging task of introducing you to tree banking in 5 slides. But there are these much more detailed presentations that you can find even on this channel, SunoikisisDC channel. So I suggest that you go and scroll through previous programs, previous years, and if you're interested in the topic, you can certainly find more in-depth presentations of what it is. But to not eat more of my time, tree banking is the word that we use to describe linguistic analysis of a sentence that takes the form of an inverted tree, where everything is anchored to one point, the root of the sentence, and it sort of branches out from there. And there are 2 main types of ways to think about that, 2 main ways to conceptualize tree banking. One is within the rules of constituency grammar that focuses on the phrase structure. So here I have a constituency tree for you that groups all the words in their respective phrases and then shows the relationships between the phrases, so that in the end we reach the uppermost branch of the hierarchical tree. And we also have the dependency grammar, where the focus is rather on the individual word and how it functions within the sentence and not within a phrase. And as you see here, a dependency tree is one with much fewer branches than the one that is made within the constituency grammar. formalism. And this is what makes it generally better for languages that have variable word order. It's also easier to use in cross-linguistic comparisons because languages tend to realize different structures in different ways, and word order plays a role in that. And it is, to a certain extent, more efficient for parsing tasks. So this is one of the reasons why most Greek and Latin Treebank projects have chosen to work within the dependency framework. But there are also combinations, hybrid treebanks that use a little bit of both. So when we say treebank, we mean by that database of a collection of syntactic trees that are annotated according to an established formalism. And this annotation can be done manually by linguists, or it could be performed by parsing algorithms automatically. And there is also this very successful approach in recent years where it's done semi-automatically with human verification of the results provided by the computer. And it is often, this database is often structured in XML, but in recent years, relational databases are also gaining a lot of popularity for various reasons. And tree banking in general has applications in computational linguistics, in corpus linguistics, in natural language processing, in machine translation models, and all of these things. So I'm going to show you a little bit more details about the dependency framework within which PapyGreek and the other Greek and Latin tree banking projects have been working mostly. So the most important thing in a dependency tree is the main finite verb. This is what gets attached to this abstract root of the sentence, or it could be a coordinator in case you have multiple main predicates. And then I am going to introduce you to some terminology if this is your first encounter with tree banking. And I have written here a little glossary because I use these interchangeably, so let's not get lost. When we say a head or a parent or a governor, we mean a word that is governing another word. So all the words are functioning within this head-dependent relationships. This is the head in this case, and it's, or the parent or the governor, and its dependents or children or descendants are these words. And then this word is the head of that word. And these three words here are all siblings because they are all governed by the same parent node. And it's very important to remember that each word can have only one head. So this is an acyclic relationship. You cannot, for example, this word cannot be both the child and the parent of this word. And a word can in turn have one, multiple, or zero dependents, depending on the syntactic structure of the sentence. And you have here in this little tree snippets that I've put on the presentation, these relation labels that indicate the function that this particular word or this particular branch fulfills within the syntactic tree. So we have the main predicate here, this functions as an object, and so on and so forth. So the main method of annotation that we use in PapyGreek and also in other big tree banking projects is the manual annotation, which has its perks that we'll discuss a little bit later on in my presentation. It's usually done through a user interface. By far the most popular one is Arethusa, where the information as you tree bank is recorded as XML. Thankfully, you never have to see this XML unless you really want to. This is what you see. You interact with these words on the screen that you get to arrange in the tree structure in a very delightful and addictive manner. And the sentence, this would be the linear representation of the sentence, how we would read it, is then represented in the backstage processes of Arethusa as this XML code, where the linear reading of the from top to bottom like this. But also all other things, all other types of linguistic annotation are added in the attributes of these XML elements. And here are more details about that. So the form and the lemma are sort of self-explanatory, but this little attribute here is one that bears great importance because it tells us everything we need to know about the word's morphology. We get the part of speech, then depending on what the word is and which categories apply to it, we can have mood or tense or the words number, gender, and so forth. And everything is recorded like these. Letter positions that all are responsible for different aspects of the morphology of the word and can then be queried to retrieve information. Then we have this relation label that I showed you in the previous slide, which tells you about the syntactic function of that particular word. And the head attribute is the thing that tells you which the needed governor of this word is in the tree hierarchy. So, for example, here, Isidora is governed by head number 11, and we can go in the sentence, see which word is word 11. That is an artificially added word because there is some sort of ellipsis in this sentence that we needed to overcome by adding this artificial token. And so these head attributes refer to the ID of the word in the XML. And this is how the tree is built backstage. And this is sort of everything you need to know in order to perform at least basic linguistic research. And yeah, now after this lightning introduction to tree banking, I'm going to hand it back to Marja, who's going to show you a short study done with tree banking on PapyGreek's platform.
Okay, thank you. That was very compact intro on tree banking. Thank you. And I will then go on to show a sort of combined morphosyntactic query, looking at the grammatical case discrepancy between the article and the noun. And then you can use Treebank data for it. And this article is basing the case study in more detail. This was, I think, in your required readings as well. But continuing from the case study 1 that we already looked at, we can look more closely into the genitive-dative case variation if we think that this is primary reason for the orthographic variation that we saw in the case study 1. So we can, for example, look at the definite article in masculine and neuter gender. They follow the second declension. So the genitive has tu and the dative has to. So there's again the u or possibilities. And if the definite article and its head noun were both written in the sort of wrong case, it can kind of strengthen the argument of actual case merger being behind the sort of orthographic variation we see. And then again, if they are written differently, we can rely more on the phonological explanation, perhaps. This is, again, a bit simplified. There are many caveats here, but I will set them aside for now. So, okay. Let's go look at what kind of queries we can then make. So we can, for example, try to find cases where the head word is in singular genitive, and then it has an article with orthographic variation from omega to u. so from the dative to genitive. So the original writer wrote a dative ending, but an editor regularized it into genitive because the article and the noun should agree between themselves. So here we would build a tree in the PapyGreek search. So in the previous case study, I had only one blue box where you can, if you go to the website, you can see there is one blue box where you can start writing things. So we did write form and so on in the previous case study, and here we can first have the head box here as the singular genitive case, and then there is a plus sign that you can click, and then it will give you another box, which will then give you the child or the dependent of this word. So you can then this way build the query tree as you would build the tree bank that like Polina was showing just a minute ago. So there we have the post tag for article, which is L, and in the singular, and then again we can have the same phonological orthographic query added to the same. So this way we can combine the syntactic query and some morphology and the orthographic in the same query. We could also add here the restriction of the word final position if we think that is useful. So you can have many different things in the query, and you can build as complex tree as you would wish. But of course, often simple queries can also do quite a lot. And then, for example, we get this type of examples from that query. So in the papyrus, we have a definite article that looks like a dative, even though it governs a genitive noun. So it is regularized like this in the papyri.info. So there is a genitive article here. So the article is in the dative case by many possible reasons. We actually cannot know. Is it due to analogy from the previous words, because the two previous words are correctly in the dative? So is it sort of a continuation of that? Or is it due to the writer not knowing that the genitive case was actually needed? So there's the case merger option in a way. Is it due to the similar pronunciation of the dative and genitive endings? So this is the more phonological explanation for mixing these words. And in this phrase, the genitive head, monos, there declines according to the third declension, so it has a different case ending. So the genitive ending is ending in os. So this was just an example of what kind of results you get. And to make the study sort of more complete, we would actually need several queries for different types of scenarios. So looking, first of all, different directions from genitive to dative and dative to genitive, and then look at also in different variations or combinations if the head also has the orthographic problem, or if the head only has the orthographic problem and that article is written correctly. And then again, we should compare how do the feminine and plural articles and nouns behave with their genitives and datives. And then we could include other words on the same noun phrase. So the article and the noun is only possibly one part, so there might be intervening adjectives, and how are they then declined or written with their case ending. So there is actually quite a lot to do if we want to look at this type of problem. So PapyGreek Search is capable of handling those types of queries that I mentioned. The problem is that the tree bank data is quite small in our corpus. So if we look at dependency trees, then the PapyGreek Search is targeting the query only to the PapyGreek Treebank corpus. We don't include, at least at the moment, any other corpora there. So if we do only morphological and orthographic queries, then the target is the whole Duke databank, and then we get quite a lot more results. So this was not a case study where I would give an answer to a linguistic problem. It's just a beginning of one. And now Polina can show more about the different query interface.
Thanks, Marja. No answers here either, only more problems. That's what keeps the work interesting, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you very quickly, because I see we have a little time left, about what it is that I'm doing with tree banking. And I'm going to try to show you a tool that I've been developing. Fingers crossed it all works. But let's go. So it is very much intuitive that the Greek of the papyri is different from literary Greek. You don't need to have read much papyri in order to come to this conclusion. But if you want to describe it and quantify it and speak about it in more serious terms, it would be nice to be able to show your data for that. So I've chosen this relatively narrow focal point of the word order in the noun phrase in order to look at the differences. And I have these 5 corpora that I am comparing. 2 of them are literary Greek, one prose and one verse. I have 2 corpora of documentary papyri, one PapyGreek corpus that is manually annotated, and Duke NLP corpus that is automatically annotated. And I also compare my results to the Koine Greek of the New Testament. And beyond questions of word order, I am also trying to explore what the challenges are in using tree banks for research and whether there are any responsible approaches to those challenges. Hopefully, the answer to that is yes. And very much as a side quest, that was not at all my plan in the beginning. I had to build a query tool in order to find some answers for that, because at the time that I was starting my thesis, there was none that I could use immediately that could do everything I wanted it to do. So that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today. The name of that tool is KTB, short for Kiln for Tree Banking. It has been developed throughout these years with the wonderful help of Jamie Norrish, who is sadly no longer with us, and to whom I'm indebted eternally for all his help and his amazing solutions to all of my increasingly crazy requests about the functionalities that this platform should have. And now I'm left to tend to it alone, and hopefully I can get it to still be useful to me and other people in the future. And why it is having this bizarre name? It is because it's based on the Kiln platform, which you've already seen at least on a slide. If you haven't tried it yourself, under the name of EFES for epigraphic documents. And also as a nod, as a linguistic pun, of course, because what is a linguistic project without a linguistic pun? For the triconsonant cluster KTB, that in Semitic languages has meanings that have to do with writing and books, and this is not really my area of expertise, so I'll stop it there. What it is a data management system tool that allows me to do multi-step annotation additionally to what is already present in tree banking's framework. It is a test suite to see if my annotation has achieved the desired effect. And most importantly, it is a search engine. And now we got to the scary bit where I will try to show you a little bit live. If it's a thing that you download on your computer, you unzip it and you run it and you index the files that you want to have in it, and it's there for you to use. And as I said, it's a database management thing. You can see here all the corpora I've provided in this demo version of KTB that I have linked in our program. If we are to select one of these corpora, we can see how many text we have, sentences, tokens that are counted in different ways depending on what number you're interested in. You can also see the individual texts, reorder them, filter them, whatever. This is handy, but not the most exciting part. The most exciting part is the search or the searches, but if I have time, I'll get to that too. I've pre-selected here the PapyGreek corpus, and I want to look at adjectives because this is the chapter of my thesis that is currently tormenting me. So I get to show you a little bit of that too. And just with these facets that are selected here, this is like an online shopping site. You have facets and you can click on them, expand them, select them, and this filters the results that you get here. So we can see, for example, which are the lemmata of the adjectives that we have in PapyGreek and the number of instances that each lemma has. We see quite a few of them, but I have my eyes set on the lemma kalos, which I cannot see now. Oh, there it is. It has 22 instances in PapyGreek. We can look at them. We can open the sentence that contains this particular instance. We can look at how it's structured and do all sorts of cool things just by looking at it. That's also something that tree banking is useful for. But then if I want to compare how this particular adjective, for example, behaves in papyri with its occurrences in other types of Greek, like in prose, I can select it like so and get rid of PapyGreek. And here I can look at all kinds of additional metadata, like the authors that have used this particular adjective, what the genre is. I can also try to limit the results that I'm getting by saying different things about the governor, the head of this word. For example, I only want to look at heads that are nouns, because this adjective can depend adverbially under verbs and all sorts of other exciting things. And I would also like to only look at non-articular phrases, which is something that I can achieve as easily as clicking on this facet. And so now we have limited the results quite a lot. But still 100 instances is something that you might not want to look at now. So we can look at other surface information about this adjective and the nouns that are governing it, like its animacy. For example, we see that in literary text, mostly a non-concrete, well, this is not animacy, but semantics. And this is a inherited title of that facet, so never mind, don't worry about it. So non-concrete nouns mostly govern kalos in our literary prose corpus for whatever reason. And if we select that, we can see, for example, where, on which side of the noun this adjective appears. And for non-concrete nouns, it is very much before them. But if we look at person nouns, for example, a different semantic class of nouns, and we check where the position of the adjective is, we see that, yeah, we have a few pre-posed instances, but mostly it is post-posed. Now, what does this tell us? Does it mean that the semantic class of the governor of the adjective somehow influences its position? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe there is something about the pragmatic context in the sentences where these occurrences are found that warrants their position on either side of the noun. But this is something that we have to find out with more in-depth research, with qualitative research. So quantitative queries can only take us to do things on our own. But these are super simple things now in the demo. I've deliberately kept it that way, so things don't fall apart because of the demo effect. But just to take you very quickly through what KTB can do for you if you want to be my test subject and download it and try it out. For example, it is built on the basic notation that the dependency tree bank, the AGDT framework that we all use provides you. But I have built upon that various shortcuts for different things that if you would have to spell out in other query engines, you would have to be very verbose about it. For example, I have shortcuts about what diphthong is, proper names, patronyms, and other rather complex things. Like, for example, what does it mean for a word to have an article? Some tree bankers would put the article, this is the article, in case Greek is not your thing. This is the article of this noun phrase, and some tree bankers can and have put it under this word, and the same phrase also appears like so in other annotations. So my query platform takes both into account when it's giving me the results. And then coordination and what actually is a governor is something that causes a lot of headaches to people when they start querying, because these words, although they don't immediately hang under these words, are actually their dependents in tree banking. So these are the main verbs, and these are the two subjects to those main verbs, but they're sort of connected to them through these coordinators. And here we have an even messier situation where the subjects actually appear at different levels of coordination. So I am very excited that KTB can find you these subjects and all these subjects to these verbs, regardless of any coordinating shenanigans. And to date, there are more than 200, maybe closer to 300 indexed fields that tell you different things about words, about metadata, about basic sentence word order, and anything that was interesting to me while doing my research. And you can stack the fields, you can OR them, you can do all sorts of nice combinations. And as I mentioned, you can find and explore phenomena that otherwise would be super verbose to describe in other query engines. But here I have done the work for you. And I have in the official version of KTB 4 levels of this search. So you have the database management search, the sentence search for the basic word order, then the standard word search, and the very, very niche NP, a noun phrase specific search that tells you things you want to know about the noun phrase. So very quick, more in-depth research questions from my work. And why it is so important to be able to filter your results, because sometimes less is more. And if you have really large corpora, then definitely you want to filter as much as possible. So I want to look at the position of the adjective, right? But in linguistics, people don't necessarily always agree what an adjective is. And so if good, happy, and tall are obviously adjectives, some tree banking frameworks, including the one that we use, have tree banked some numerals or some demonstrative pronouns with the post-tag adjective as well. And quantifiers, people mostly agree that they are adjectives, but they introduce a lot of noise in a study like mine because there are so many of them, and they are stubbornly pre-posed, so they like to appear before their noun, so they really skew the picture if you want to look at other adjectives. And there are a lot of compounding factors for the position of the adjective that you want to exclude, or you want to look in isolation. in order to know what it is that is going on. So here is actually the current filters that I have applied to look at adjectives for this troublesome chapter that I'm writing. And these all work well enough to give me the least false positives and hopefully also the least false negatives. And here's some results from nominal genitives, for example, again, very quickly. You can see that in different corpora, they appear before or after the noun in different proportions. The literary texts have slightly more postpose instances, but for papyri, and especially for New Testament Koine Greek, postpose is the way to go. And there are very many factors that account for that. But they seem to function more in literature and hence provide more variation for the position of the nominal genitives, while as in papyri, doesn't matter these factors. It seems everything is universally postposed mostly. But there is one factor that I found that I don't think comes to mind immediately, even to people that have done in-depth linguistic research, and this is the syntactic heaviness. That means, in the simplest of terms, how many things depend under that thing that you want to look at. So this is a light branch, for example. See, it has nothing underneath. And this is a heavy branch because this word that I'm interested in actually governs a word of its own. And here are some charts that illustrate that it actually is something that we can quantitatively and then qualitatively explore more of. Very quickly dashing through those because we are out of time. And for some experiments that you can read more about in the further readings, I've linked to a paper, a recent paper of mine that discusses this in more detail. It turns out that if you provide enough annotation based on criteria that editors have put in place for grouping text as standard or non-standard Greek, you can also teach the computer to recognize them. Of course, this is super experimental and it can be refined much more in the future. But with it, I've been able to find that it surprisingly sort of works. And that in non-standard texts, for example, we have more postnominal modifiers than in standard ones, and other interesting things that set the two types apart. And now to do a little recap, if you now want to do your exercises at home and you wonder which platform you want to use, I'd say use both, try them out. But if in future you'd like to try either platform, again, use both is my answer. PapyGreek is good because it has all-in-one morphology, phonetics, orthography, and it requires no coding. My thing requires some coding if you want to customize it, but with the things that it already has in place, it's already quite useful. So I've heard. And it's also good that you can bring your own text into it. It doesn't have to be the text that I have there now. You can use something that you've treebanked or that you found and you want to explore more. And this is the point in our presentation where I was supposed to tell you more about these amazing treebank projects, the biggest ones that are out there. But somehow we ran out of time. So very quickly, I will put these slides up in the program and you can follow these links and learn more about them. I've also given short introduction for each of them in the remaining slides that I have, but be sure to go and check them out. They most of them have their own query tools. There is variety to choose between. But yeah, it's worth exploring, seeing what is out there, and something might spark your interest, and you might decide that you want to learn more about it. So yeah, with a fast forward, thank you, and shall we hear some questions if you have any?
Yeah, please do, if you're watching live, put any questions in the chat that we can discuss now. And yeah, while we hopefully see if there are any questions coming. Do you want to talk briefly about the exercise as well, and what the students trying the exercise might expect to find?
Yes.
So obviously, all our students in London watching this, you have to do at least the PapyGreek search and hopefully have a go with KTB as well. So would you like to show us a little bit of that?
Right, so I am now looking at the syllabus for today's class, and here are the exercises listed near the end. We have tried to describe in as much detail as possible what you can do. Also for the exercise that you can do with PapyGreek, there is also an article that is explaining things in more detail. But basically, you can follow this link, which is a pre-saved search. And it will take you to the PapyGreek platform. I'll make this a bit bigger. And here is the field that you need to somehow modify. You'll figure it out when you read the description in more detail in order to complete your exercise. Remember, though, that if you want to see the results, enter won't help. You need to actually click on the search button over here. So the results are loaded like this, and you can explore them, you can filter them, and yeah, have fun. And then for the optional KTB exercise, you would need to download it first. The link for that is here under resources. And installing it might seem a bit daunting at first. You need to have, for one, the right Java version in order to do that. But I have written a rather, hopefully, detailed introduction and instructions on what to do. And then I also urge you to email me if you want to try it out and you need some support. I am more than happy to help you and have you try it out. But yeah, you just use the facets like I showed you and try to combine them in different ways and try to see how results change and what interesting things we can learn for the Greek language from that.
Great, thank you very much. So if you have any questions, anybody watching live, please do put those in the chat. Yeah, in the meantime, I just want to say this is my first time seeing KTB, obviously, and seeing how it works. And I think it's really brilliant that you've done this to enable the searching across different types of tree banking. Obviously, the sort of interoperability between the different tree banks is a real big issue for anybody who wants to compare things that have been tree banked by different people or according to slightly different systems. So being able to do that sort of search is really a huge achievement in terms of doing comparative stuff across different corpora as well.
Right, and you actually, thank you very much for your kind words. But this is not at all my achievement. A lot of work has been done by some brilliant people, linguists who have worked on closing the gap between the different approaches. And so there is significant interoperability between the major projects out there. There are slightly different flavors of tree banks that you can encounter, but they are systems put in place in other projects that allow you to modify things and convert them between the different frameworks. Yeah, so it's just to finish that thought, it's a wonderful field actually. The ancient Greek linguistics and computational linguistics, this intersection of them that we work in. Lovely people work in it that are very open about sharing their data and making it accessible and helping other people use it. So we have really benefited enormously by that culture of interoperability and accessibility and openness. So this is something that, as a field, we can be proud of, I think.
Absolutely. Great. And is there anything else that you wanted to add about PapyGreek, about anything that we might expect to see coming out of the PapyGreek project still?
Well, yeah, stay tuned. But I am still hopeful that we do get the grammar part available at some point. It requires some writing, and of course the funding is no longer existent, so it's slow. But the idea is that there is short descriptions of how the language of papyri is a bit different maybe than in literary texts, and then query sort of the saved searches that I already showed are one important part of it, so that people can then sort of directly do the queries themselves and see the data that's behind the phenomena that are described. But if there is somebody who is really enthusiastic about tree banking, then please do contact, and we can arrange so that new tree banks can be made for our corpus as well. So that's always a desideratum.
Absolutely. We have a question in the chat from Sarah who says, if we've got time now in the Q&A, and I think we can squeeze this in, could you talk a little bit about the list of projects on your final slide that you had to rush through because it looks really helpful. Yeah, Polly, would you mind talking a little bit about those other projects as well?
Oh, not at all. Thank you so much for letting me do that, Sarah. So yeah, we have some really amazing projects that we all benefit from all the time. We have the universal dependencies, which is one of the most influential ones. It's using a slightly different annotation scheme from the one that we showed you, different labels. But it's huge in terms of the number of languages that it hosts. It has its own query tool and also infrastructure that allows you to build trees, query them syntactically, semantically, and so forth. And it's very useful for cross-linguistic research. If that's your thing, that's the place to go. Now, I don't have a dedicated slide for the ancient Greek and Latin dependency tree bank, but this is the thing that started it all in a way. This is like the first ancient Greek and Latin tree bank that sort of set the standard and the rules that we have all used afterwards and adapted to our needs. Definitely go check out what they have in this link. Something that I am really happy to shout out today is this relatively recently published work by Giuseppe Celano, the Opera Greca Annotata, which is currently, I do have a slide for that, which is the largest by far corpus of ancient Greek texts. It has over 40 million tokens. That's really amazing, and it's all automatically generated, and it's trained actually on manually created text, but many of them. So we can expect really good reliability out of it, which is something that's very, very important. We have time to tell you more about the woes in using manual tree banks that are small because we are human and we can only do so much in our lifetime, and automatic tree banks that are great because they're big, but then they're wrong about a lot of things. So this really sort of bridges the gap in a nice way. Then if Latin is your thing, oh, and also there is the Latin version coming soon. If Latin is a thing that you are interested in, there's this brilliant project, Lila, linking Latin, that has not just the corpora, but it has a whole knowledge base where you can do all sorts of queries, linguistic queries on many different levels. It's really worth checking out, and also they have a really cool search platform then you can go and play with. And let's not forget about the Pedalian project. How to say, extensions. Well, really, it's the lovely people in Leuven that are doing this work. The Pedalian trees, for example, section of the Pedalian project has this hybrid mode of annotation that I mentioned. And it's really cool because you can see their text that you would otherwise not really see. They're sort of overlooked in other tree banking collections. They have vocabulary tools. This is brilliant for beginners that want to learn Greek, but they find it daunting, and they only want to focus on, for example, the most frequent 1,000 words in the Greek language. It's really cool. Then you have this great standalone search that's developed by Alec Kersmakers, who's also the person behind the huge Papyrological automatically annotated corpus, the Duke NLP Treebank. And he has also made this really big and very important corpus of automatically annotated Greek. Again, amazing numbers, very useful, because in corpus linguistics we are interested in the size of the corpus. The more the better, ideally. And it also has a very easy to use and intuitive browser search that I cannot show you how to use because I haven't learned it myself, but from what I've seen, also on videos in Sunoikisis, by the way. So if this is something that you're interested in, make sure to go check those out. You can see it and try it out for yourself. Is there anything I'm missing? I think that's all, again, very quickly, but that's all I can tell you about projects that I don't personally work for and know much details about. My most sincere admiration to the people that are behind them, and yeah, definitely go try them out.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Polly. I have another question about how you handle broken texts in your tree bank in PapyGreek. So obviously, tree banking papyri, or if you were to tree bank inscriptions, say, that might be a little bit different than tree banking a literary text, where you pretty much always have complete sentences, whereas lots of papyri, they're damaged. They might have a hole in the middle. They might have a broken bit at the end of the line. Have you focused your tree banking only on the best preserved texts? What do you plan to do when you're tree banking half a sentence rather than a complete sentence?
Well, we shouldn't sort of select only perfectly survived papyri, because then we would really have not much to tree bank. All the papyri almost have some amount of gaps. The only thing we can do is annotate as much as we can. So obviously we do have some sort of missing parts of the tree, so we have only some branches left of some sentences. So, but even if we still have sort of some links between the words, that's possible to do. Sometimes, of course, if there is something important missing, we don't know, there's no point of doing the syntactic tree, because we don't actually know what kind of parts are missing there. So we do have broken stuff, but then there is quite a lot of sentences that you can build the tree. And yeah, you just have to live with the fact that not everything is perfect. And for morphology, you still sort of, if you have one word that is whole, even if the sentence is not whole, then you still have the morphological information. So I don't think we should expect artificial intelligence to fill in the gaps, because then it's sort of just artificial intelligence filling in and not actual historical information.
And then talking of filling in the gaps, in the PapyGreek Treebank, have you is there a way to sort of limit the search to only things that are in the text rather than those restored by editors? Is that something that's marked, and how could you sort of limit your queries depending on editorial interventions of that sort?
Yes, so that was one of the main points when I was beginning to do this. I don't think I have in any of the slides visible the whole search interface, but so that since we do have the original and the regularized both in the XML, and so we wanted to keep both of them there. So when you are doing the search, it is possible that you do focus on the original or on the regularized side. Actually, at the moment in the PapyGreek search, you cannot sort of do the comparison the way I originally wanted, but you can still focus the search on the original or in the regularized. But if you're doing a orthographic search, then it automatically deals with those both. But if you're doing something else, then you can just, choose which one to focus on.
Excellent, and I think that's a really important point for our students as well when thinking about dealing with historical texts, is that you do have regularizations by the editor, you do have gaps that people have filled in, and that perhaps you need to then treat this sort of historic data slightly differently and do additional things like you've done in terms of annotating that to make sure that you can do the sorts of queries that you want when your data is incomplete or when your sources are a bit broken, that you don't necessarily have to do when working with modern languages rather than historic languages.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's sort of very important to keep in mind also when you're doing the queries that if you are looking for things, of course, as a linguist, you are interested in what's written in the papyrus, so using the original part, and then sort of the amount of results you get from something is perhaps much smaller because in the original part we don't annotate any of the non-existing forms, like what the editor has filled the gap with, that only exists in the regular side. So yeah.
No. Great. Any final questions in the chat from anybody watching live? Do you get your last questions in now? And while we see if there are any more final questions, I suppose, what do you think is the sort of like biggest advantage of using this sort of Treebank text? If you're not necessarily wanting to answer like linguistic questions, but rather questions about the text themselves. So not all of our students are really linguists, but they might be interested in the text from another angle. How can Treebanking help them do that?
Marja, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm trying. Not possible for me to say that there's that's beyond linguistics interesting.
I have one suggestion, and I'm sure you can come up with more meanwhile. Even if you're not super interested in all the nitty-gritties of the linguistic part of a Treebank, The act of building the tree and then even looking at trees that other people have built helps you actually understand the text so much better. There's this great line that Vanessa used in one of her, Vanessa Gorman, in one of her presentations for tree banking that you might come across in this channel, that you can't hide when you make the tree. When you're reading a text, if you don't understand the word, you can sort of, sweep it under the rug and continue. But actually, this word may hold the key to something you want to know. And you're frozen for a little bit, so I guess my internet betrayed me in this moment. Anyways,
Yeah.
It helps. It helps understanding the language better. And I think if we want to do anything with Asian studies and we're using the text as our starting point, we need to make sure damn well that we understand them. So tree banking helps with that a lot. And even if you are at the beginner's level of learning Greek, actually seeing the sentence in this tree structure removes a lot of the anxieties that one has about which word goes where and what happens. For my part, I started tree banking after having done Greek for many, 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 many years. But I feel I truly started understanding how it works after I started tree banking. It was really the window into text and whole new world.
Yeah, absolutely. It removes any sort of like ambiguity in your interpretation. You've got to make it really, really clear when you're tree banking exactly what you think every single part you're making.
It removes the ambiguity from your interpretation, but there is a lot of ambiguity in the text that is there sometimes for a reason, right? That's how language works.
Yeah.
And we have to make choices about that sort of ambiguity because you can only do one or the other sometimes. But even that's interesting. That opens a window into the mind of the annotator. So
yeah. Absolutely, great. So I don't see any more comments in the chat. Anything else final that you want to add about papyrological research, about tree banking?
Well, just learning the language is quite essential when you're trying to use ancient sources. So that gives you so much more. Of course, you can do without, but it really helps you. And then when you get into the language, then yes, use tree banking. That's the method to go.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for this absolutely fascinating session on papyrological research and tree banking. Thank you to everybody watching live, and thank you for all of your questions today. And thank you to everybody watching later as well. So this is the final session for the Syneukisis Spring 2025 series. So we're finishing up today on the 20th of March. And there will be more Syneukisis sessions in the future, which I'm sure will include plenty more on tree banking and on digital papyrology. Great. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.